In the YouTube video by fellow YouTuber The Court's Sense, titled The Downfall of Coach Red Pill, we are presented with a meticulously crafted analysis that, in my opinion, exudes a genuine and sincere approach towards examining the persona of its subject, Gonzalo Lira, or more commonly known as Coach Red Pill. However, despite the video's visually appealing and well-executed style, it ultimately showcases only the carefully constructed image that Gonzalo Lira intended for the world to witness. It's akin to dissecting the enigmatic wizard from the world of Oz without peering behind the curtain. But what's behind the facade of Gonzalo Lira's persona? And why is the Court's Sense video essay presenting us with only a false image and not Gonzalo's real picture? Watch the video until the end and find out.
The Facts Hunter.
Hello everyone. This is a Facts Hunter, and today I'm gonna be giving my reaction to a video about Gonzalo Lira published by the YouTube channel called The Court's Sense. The video does a great job at analyzing its main subject, the internet personality Coach Red Pill. However, the same cannot be said about the analysis of the man behind the personality. But I cannot blame the video's creator for this. After all, Coach Red Pill is the creation of Gonzalo Lira, who spent his first years on YouTube hiding his identity from the rest of the world. After Gonzalo's identity was exposed in an internet drama involving another YouTuber by the name Crowd there has not been a well-detailed analysis of the real Gonzalo Lira. Mostly because the first part of Gonzalo's life was documented in Spanish publications. And as we can see by the information viewed in the Court's Sense video, most of the information comes from YouTube, which only has Gonzalo's records of his time in the English-speaking side of the internet. I truly appreciate channels like the Court's Sense for attempting to analyze Coach Red Pill, and I want to give my opinion on his analysis. And I want to be clear, he did a great job. The thing is that he left a lot of stuff in the dark, and I want to bring some light to the things he didn't mention. Now, I will be talking about some of his key statements at the beginning of the video, then I'll jump a few minutes as I will be skipping the court's opinion on the Red Pill and Manosphere subjects. But if you're interested in watching the whole video, I will be leaving the link down below on the descriptions. So let's get started.
Of all the characters of the internet, maybe one of the strangest ones is the case of Gonzalo Lira, aka Coach Red Pill, a writer turned film director, turned YouTuber, turned anti-Ukrainian war reporter who has since mysteriously disappeared.
So after 15 seconds into the video, I do have to stop and point out two things. First, the court left out one of Gonzalo's many careers. Gonzalo has been a writer, a film director/producer, an economist blogger, then a dating coach, and not a war reporter, but a Russian propagandist right-wing YouTuber. And this is not my opinion. It is a fact. And to prove my point, we can read in Google the definition of a reporter. A reporter is a journalist who uses investigation and research to gather the details of a story or event and deliver the facts to the public through a medium or platform. Gonzalo made videos with topics such as the US is planning on assassinating Zelensky, Biden will be sidelined and replaced by Kamala Harris, and the pending race wars. I don't think I need to explain why these are not facts, but a lot of people in the conservative right do want to call Gonzalo a reporter not because he is telling them facts, as he should, but because he is telling them stories they like to hear and would love for them to be facts.
So what leads an internet dating coach to the bottom of a Ukrainian prison or ditch?
Now, 23 seconds in, the court repeats a suggestion that he previously mentioned earlier, but that I wanted to address a little bit more into the video. The court claims Gonzalo has disappeared and that he might be in a ditch. Now, I haven't watched all of Court's Sense videos, but it looks like the Court's Sense has the impression that Ukraine is operating outside of the law, which is incorrect. Gonzalo is currently in a detention facility awaiting trial. And to prove my point, Gonzalo's own father has confirmed in an angry comment he left on one of my videos that Gonzalo had a day in Ukrainian court this past November 8th. The result of the court's decision as of the making of this video is that Gonzalo will be in detention jail without bail until his trial date, which has been rescheduled for a second time until January 6, 2024. But the point is that Gonzalo is not in a ditch, and he is certainly not disappeared. Moving on.
I think that this question is important because the downfall of Coach Red Pill is a great case study to see how even a mild amount of internet fame can derail a whole life. So who is Gonzalo Lira? So let's begin with some basic information. Gonzalo Lira was born in California and is both Chilean and American. He studied in Santiago and later Dartmouth College.
Stopping the video at minute 157, there is something that I need to address on the image that the Court's Sense is delivering to us. From where I am standing, and I might be wrong, but to me, the Court seems to present Gonzalo in a way that makes Gonzalo look as an intellectually gifted individual because he attended an Ivy League school like Dartmouth. The problem is that this is the image that Gonzalo projected to the English-speaking world. However, this image is not the full picture. The reality is that Gonzalo comes from an aristocratic, wealthy family that spent millions of dollars sending Gonzalo to the best schools in Chile. However, even though his family was privileged enough to get Gonzalo into the right schools, Gonzalo was not intellectually capable of achieving the career he first attempted to obtain. Between 1989 and 1991, Gonzalo attempted to obtain a degree in commercial engineering. He attended two of the most prestigious educational institutions in Chile, the exclusive Academy of Adolfo Ibáñez and the University of Chile. Gonzalo Lira was kicked out of these two institutions after the first year due to low grades. Furthermore, thanks to his aristocratic family, Gonzalo was accepted into the legacy Ivy League school at Dartmouth. Gonzalo was accepted because he is the direct descendant of the first president of Chile, and not because of Gonzalo's academic score. And that's not all. Gonzalo only attended 3 of the 4 years of education after being suspended during his freshman year for allegedly sexually assaulting a fellow female student. Gonzalo graduated after only 3 years with a bachelor's degree in history and philosophy. Gonzalo graduated with a liberal arts degree because he couldn't cut it as an engineering student. So my point is that Gonzalo shows a high level of intellect because of his articulated vocabulary, which he obtained from being born into wealth and raised by a family of economists and lawyers. But he doesn't have a high intellect that could be called a natural gift or talent. As a matter of fact, Gonzalo's first book was a semi-autobiographical novel, 180 pages long, of a young aristocratic Chilean boy who was expelled from school but was ashamed of coming back home to his family. His novel was rejected because it had many literary problems. Even after he managed to have his book published, it is now out of print due to a lack of demand. Okay, moving on.
And he went to Hollywood to be an aspiring screenwriter. He found some success in the entertainment business and came to direct and even produce a small film. Later, he went on to become a writer in New York and found success writing spy thrillers.
Okay, in minute 205, I have to clarify, Gonzalo didn't find success in the entertainment industry. He was able to get his book published through connections and got his movie filmed because he was able to get the investment money by using his family's influence. But his novels are the equivalent of Pulp Fiction, and his movie bombed, even though it was a multi-million-dollar production made in Chile. So again, the lack of details make Gonzalo look as if he was a true success story.
However, the interesting part is his internet presence. He founded a life advice and dating coach channel called Coach Red Pill that grew to almost 300,000 subscribers. Indeed, most of the people here know this illustrious fellow from this phase in his life. I found his channel in 2018, and it was a mixed bag. Some videos were solid pieces of life advice from a 50-year-old that had had much life experience in business and travel. However, the more popular videos were mostly about dating and women. And although my teenage self was curious enough to see them, there was not much more substance that you would come to find in other characters such as Andrew Tate, a hedonistic and immoral list of tips to get laid and eventually find somebody to settle with.
There is something that needs to be mentioned about the nature of the Coach Red Pill channel. When the channel started in 2017, Gonzalo was performing a fictional character, a facade. Gonzalo was not being authentic when he spoke to the camera. There were things happening behind the image that Gonzalo was projecting. With time, it became difficult for Gonzalo to remain congruent with the image that he projected as his life behind the scenes was spiraling out of control. For example, Gonzalo filmed his Coach Red Pill videos mainly from two locations. For the most part, between 2017 and 2019, Gonzalo was filming in Great Britain. After this, the rest of his videos were filmed in Kharkiv, Ukraine, with some exceptions when he traveled to other places. Another thing that was happening that his audience was not aware of was that his family was starting to break up. In November 2016, Gonzalo, his wife, and 2 kids moved from Chile to Ukraine. However, after a few months, in February of 2017, Gonzalo abandoned his family in Ukraine and moved without them to live and work in the UK. In 2018, Gonzalo's then wife received a phone call from a woman asking if she was still married to Gonzalo. According to Gonzalo's now ex-wife, they haven't lived together as a family since 2017. I believe this took a mental toll on Gonzalo, which is, in my opinion, the reason for Gonzalo's increasingly deranged behavior and attraction to internet drama.
This channel also touched on politics from time to time, and predictably, these opinions were politically incorrect. After all, it was the golden age of anti-SJW YouTube, and with time the channel became more and more political. But with time, the channel began to stagnate, and Gonzalo concluded that this channel was being shadow banned, and that the only way to keep going is to start a second channel and shut down the original one. In the late phase of his channel, the quality and frequency decreased, and Gonzalo seemed to become increasingly unhinged, and I gradually lost all interest in this channel's content. Essentially, the channel was well on its way to dying. However, Gonzalo made a comeback onto my radar on February of 2022 with the Russo-Ukrainian War. After all, he lived in Ukraine and was in the capital when the special military operation started. Since then, his channel has been purely focused on reporting this war. Initially, he was pessimistic and thought, like the rest of the world, that Russia was going to roll Ukraine over.
Stopping at minute 423, it is hard for me to agree with the court's statement that Gonzalo was being pessimistic. This is a very inaccurate description because there are numerous videos where Gonzalo was actively looking forward for the Russians to take over Ukraine.
So today is Saturday, February 26th, and it's the third day of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Now, people in the United States do not seem to understand what is going on insofar as Russia's invasion is concerned, because they keep saying that Russia is failing, which is the weirdest comment. Russia is failing because Russia hasn't taken out the infrastructure of Ukraine hasn't hit the electrical grid, hasn't destroyed the cell phone towers or the water supply or something like that. It's just remarkable. They keep insisting that the Russians seem to advance and then retreat whenever they meet any resistance. And it's just a failure of imagination on the part of so many American commentators that they do not seem to understand what Russia is really doing with this invasion. Because you see, the American mode of war is to go to a country and destroy everything. Destroy the electrical grid, cell towers, the water supply system, everything. Just destroy the whole thing and then roll in. That's not fighting a war. That's just mopping up the total annihilation of a country. And the United States has done this repeatedly in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, or they semi-tried to do it in Syria. I mean, it's really kind of like a despicable way of making war, right? But what are the Russians doing? Well, see, the Russians, they don't want to destroy Ukraine. No, they don't want to destroy it at all. What they want to do is they want to capture it intact. See? And they don't want to hurt the civilians. Why would they? From their point of view, if they harm civilians, they just create enemies. And so they want to capture Ukraine, change the political leadership of Ukraine, and install a political leadership that is sympathetic to Russia's security needs and is going to be a long-term ally. But they don't want to alienate the Ukrainian population. Because if they alienate the Ukrainian population, well, the Ukrainian population will eventually overthrow this puppet regime. And the Russians want to install a puppet regime. Let's not pretend otherwise. But they want to install a puppet regime whereby the Ukrainian citizens are more or less indifferent to it.
There is even a video where Gonzalo states that if he was the dictator of Russia, he would have invaded Ukraine long time ago, and that the Ukrainian government needed to be replaced.
It's like, you know, you come across as the Putin stooge, and you're just like, you come across as fucking evil and blah, blah. And I was like, fuck that. I mean, I'm not anti-Ukrainian. On the contrary, I fucking live here. I love this fucking place, man. I mean, for all its problems, it has a ton of problems. There's something about the country that I really like. Of course, I'm not gonna shit on the fucking country. Come on, man. I'm a retard, right? But I'm not that fucking retard to be bothered by, but it's the truth. That in many ways, Vladimir Putin's war of aggression on Ukraine, this invasion of Ukraine, which is what it is. Let's not call it a police or a special operation or any bullshit like that. It's an invasion, but in many ways it was justified. And that's a hard fact, and I'm going to explain why. But I try to be as even-handed as possible. I try to be as even-handed as possible, but at the end of the day, I make my judgments, and I call a spade a spade. No, I don't call a spade a spade. I call a spade a fucking shovel. And what Vladimir Putin did, has carried out over the past week, is an invasion. Plain and simple. And this euphemism bullshit, fuck that. It's an invasion. Is it wrong to invade a country? Well, it depends now, doesn't it? You know, everybody's saying that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was unjustified. That's a lie. That's an outright lie. It was very justified with a lot of really, really good reasons. And the shock for me is not that Russia invaded Ukraine. The shock for me is that Russia took its sweet time to invade Ukraine. If I had been the dictator of Russia, I would have invaded Ukraine years ago. I'm talking 5, 8, 10 years ago. I mean, the governments running Ukraine are so corrupt and so despotic and despicable that they should have been invaded ages ago. I'm not kidding. It's not the people, it's not the country, it's not the armed forces, it's the government. And especially this last one, which is it's a nightmare. And let me get to it. Okay.
These were not pessimistic words. Gonzalo was acting as if he was on a holiday during his brief time at the Kyiv Grand Palace Hotel. He even took a dip in the hotel's swimming pool.
So here I am at the pool. Yeah, what do you think? I have it all to my lonesome. And let me see. Let me just show the date there for anybody who is, who thinks that it's not really the date. It is the date. We're expecting the invasion of Kiev any day now, any moment now, to tell you the truth. The last word I heard just before I jump in the pool is that the Russian troops are something like 40 kilometers outside of the city. That's the last I heard. And I'm going to take a swim. Yes, I know. Because there's really nothing I can do. And to tell you the truth, I've been up for the past, I woke up at 6 yesterday morning, and now it's, 9 something in the morning? And I've only had 2 hours of sleep. So, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? Yes. And here's the pool before I jump in.
Claiming that there was no point on getting worried when there was nothing he could do about the situation.
So it's about
10:20 in the morning. Yeah, I took a swim and I was in the steam room and the sauna for about an hour. And some people might ask, well, why are you doing something so frivolous? Why are you going to the pool while there's a war going on? And well, the obvious answer to that is, what exactly am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to stop the war? Do I have some magical powers? And why am I supposed to worry about it? That's the real question, the worrying. And, now, as a much older man, a man with a lot more experience, I suppose, what do we call our mistakes? We call them experience? Yeah. Well, with a man with a lot more experience, I realized that worrying about things that I cannot control is pointless. I cannot control whether the Russian army is going to march into Kiev. The only thing I can control is trying to get out of the city, which I've tried, and I'm not going to be able to, not for the foreseeable future. And so, why worry? I mean, it sounds absurd, the Alfred E. Newman joke, what, me worry? But yeah, why worry? That's the thing you should ask yourself. If you realize that you're in a situation where nothing that you do will change your situation or change an outcome, if the letter is in the post and you can't control whether it gets there on time or not, well, then don't worry about it, because there's nothing you can do about it, and worrying is just a waste of energy, and it'll just make you feel miserable instead of enjoying life, enjoying the little moments. Today is February 25th, 2022, and the Russians are invading. Last word I heard, and I'm going to check the news right now after I finish recording this video, is that the Russians were barely 40 kilometers, about 25 miles, outside of Kiev. What can I do about that? I can't get out of the city. If I try to go, there are police and Ukrainian army who are enforcing martial law, so I can't do anything except be in the hotel and enjoy the pool, enjoy the sauna, enjoy the steam room. Learn to not worry. Learn to enjoy the moments and understand the limits of what you can do and what you cannot do.
I might be wrong, but that's not what a pessimistic person will say.
At the moment that the invasion started, he was staying at a hotel in Kyiv and ended up getting kicked out because of his defeatist views and tweets. After finding himself in the middle of the Battle of Kyiv, he went back to Kharkiv, or Kharkiv, I guess, where his family lived, and began reporting and speculating on the war situation. His position steadily became more and more anti-Ukrainian and broadly anti-NATO as time went on, which landed him on hot water.
Stopping at minute 456, this statement is wrong. Gonzalo's position didn't change by becoming more anti-Ukraine and anti-West. The reason why this is wrong is because Gonzalo always maintained an anti-West and anti-American position even before the war. In fact, during Gonzalo's time as an economist blogger, which is the career the course didn't mention in his video, after the 2008 economic collapse, Gonzalo was doing interviews for Russia Today, claiming that the dollar was about to collapse.
Welcome back to the Kaiser Report. I'm Max Kaiser. Time to go back to Chile and talk with Gonzalo Lira, one of the regulars here on the Kaiser Report. Why? Because he's in Chile, and Chile and Brazil are like the only countries that are doing well these days. Gonzalo, welcome back to the Kaiser Report.
It's a pleasure being on, Max. Thanks for having me on.
All right, now, Gonzalo, apparently Chile's central bank has joined the other insane central banks around the world. Bloomberg reports that Chile's central bank is to buy $12 billion to stem the peso. Region-beating rally. This looks like another chapter in the currency war. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. It's another part of the race to the bottom.
Gonzalo, I was recently listening to one of your interviews with Max Kaiser. I couldn't help but notice that you mentioned more than once it's already time to take the gap and expatriate from America. Please share with our viewers some of your reasons why, and is it only America, or does the same hold true for some other countries as well?
For me, it's the United States, because the United States, as I said, I've lived in multiple countries and multiple continents. And the United States is the most attractive in many ways, but the cons of living in the United States have far outweighed the pros. And it doesn't seem to me that in the future things are going to get any better. Let me be specific. It seems that the government of the United States is hell-bent on creating a police state where the police forces essentially occupy the city you live in, the suburb you live in, the town you live in, and they view you as a threat. The government is hell-bent on squeezing every last dime out of you, one way or the other, and spending it on the crony capitalists. You have to keep in mind something. If the United States were a foreign country, the New York Times, the Washington Post would refer to the United States as an oligarchy, no different from Russia.
Now, unfortunately, the United States government and the American people are no longer interested in talking about the morality of particular issues. They only care about the legal aspects, whether it is illegal or not. There are certainly many things that are legal, that are immoral. And I would venture to say that that kind of kleptocracy that you see, that revolving door between government and the private sector, where people who serve the people, people who are supposed to help the country, leave the government and use their positions to make themselves rich. That's obscene as far as I'm concerned. And it's certainly not a democracy as far as I can see. But, formally, it is a democracy. Practically, it's like, as I said, I believe a kleptocratic oligarchy where if you're rich, if you're a 1%er, or frankly, it's more like 1% of the 1%, but those people are the ones that really run the show and really control the country. And it's unfortunate, and short of a revolution, I don't see how that is going to change in the immediate future.
That was Gonzalo Lira, American novelist, filmmaker, and economic blogger. Time now for today's Big Deal.
I mean, 5 people have the coof. 5 people have the coof, and you lock down the entire country. That doesn't make any sense. On top of that, in the United States, you have this hysteria over the jab, which doesn't make any rational sense. You have people saying that there are going to be vaccine passports. You have public officials, politicians, mayors and governors and whatnot saying that if you do not get the shot, then you are not going to be able to step out of your house. You're not even going to be able to go and get some groceries. I mean, this is insanity. We have crossed the line of rational discourse, and we are going into the lands of hysteria. And I find it just shocking that here in Eastern Europe, the land of Putin, right, the land of the evil fascist KGB, blah blah blah, I feel more free than in any place I can think of in the West.
This is a quick video. It's just been announced that on the 1st of February, 2022, every Austrian citizen must be vaccinated, or else they'll be arrested and fined and presumably forcibly jabbed. What did I tell you in the last video I posted? I told you, leave the Western democracies now while you still can. In Canada, you cannot leave the country unless you are fully vaccinated. Belgium and Germany are talking about universal vaccination mandates.
It was during this time that Gonzalo became an anti-West, anti-America pundit. So Gonzalo has always been anti-West, way back even before the Russian annexation of Crimea in 2014.
Of course, the Ukrainian government was not too happy to have him undermining the war effort and paid a couple of visits to him. However, Gonzalo stubbornly continued to produce his videos and live streams. This led to him getting arrested once in 2022 and once in 2023, where he claims to have been beaten and intimidated. After his second arrest, he decided to flee from Ukraine to seek asylum in Hungary, and he has not been seen since. The continuing story of Gonzalo Lira is one of the strange crossovers that could only happen in the 21st century. But what can we learn from this story, from his rise as a dating coach and then his descent into a tragic career as a war reporter? The first interesting aspect is his rise as a dating coach in the quote-unquote manosphere, and how he predated others like Tate. So why did 300,000 men decide to watch millions of hours of his content? What did he have to offer? In my opinion, his best content was his life advice, where he tells his audience about his professional experience as a writer, a minor film director, and a businessman. In a now deleted video, he talks about the reality that after some years, the sex life of a marriage loses its initial intensity. Then he explains that this is a natural phenomenon that incentivizes men to have children with multiple women. The solution to this problem is simple. No single woman can satisfy all your needs, so the logical thing is to discreetly get yourself a mistress. That way you can keep your family intact and satisfy your desires at the same time.
There are a couple of things that I want to address. I am staying away from the statement made by the courts regarding the reason of the rise of the red pill culture. But I do have to bring something to light. Throughout numerous interviews Gonzalo gave to Spanish-speaking publications, Gonzalo has been quoted several times of being a loner who always had problems finding romantic partners and friends. As a matter of fact, many of the stories that Gonzalo told in his videos contradicted previous statements that he previously told Spanish-written publications when he was promoting his books. For example, in this video called An Education for Incels, Part 1, No One Woman Can Be Your Everything, Gonzalo tells the story of a time back in 1998 where he was living in New York and was involved in multiple relationships with multiple women.
One of the problems of incels, it seems to me, as an outside observer, is that involuntary celibates have this bizarre fantasy that one woman can satisfy all of their needs. That there is this one woman who will be their everything. I'm here to tell you, there is no such person, not for any man. There is no one woman who can be your everything. Okay? Let me give you my personal experience. I'm going to talk about things that actually happened to me, and just to not get into trouble today, I'm going to talk about things that happened to me, 20 years ago. Okay? In 1998, I was living in New York City. I had a place in Lower Manhattan, nice loft, and I was dating a girl called S. She was some kind of woman. She was tall, like I like them. She worked in like sort of like a corporate environment, 5'9", 5'10", something like that. An up-and-comer, and she had a body that had been like made by hand. She was what, at the time, she must have been, it was just like, 28, 29, something like that. And she had a place in the Upper East Side, and I forget, 27. So she worked like the financial legal area. An incredible body, and she was very successful. Now, she was my official girlfriend, right? And I would go with her to parties, and she was the girlfriend, and I was the boyfriend. I was the successful novelist boyfriend, right? And she was this successful go-getting girl, and so I'd go with her to dinner parties that she'd have with her bosses and stuff, and these like social events. Okay? And at the same time, it pains me to admit it, but even though S was just very, very hot, I was also seeing a girl called, let's call her L. One of the best fucks I've ever had in my life. Now, L was not my type at all. She was this petite little redhead and just this tight little body. 5'1", 5'2", really just short. She wasn't trashy per se, but she was kind of white trash. She was just, unbelievable. Having sex with S was all right, a little bit of a chore sometimes. With L, it was just incredible. It was just fantastic sex. Best sex of my life, no question. The sex with S was sort of like a chore, and it was not a very pleasant chore, to tell you the truth. And I suspect that had it not been for L, I would have broken up with S a lot sooner. But L was just, she just gobbled me up, right? Oh man, I shouldn't have used that terminology. But anyway, there was S, who was my official girlfriend, and L, who was my side piece. And at the same time, there was S, but actually, I'll have to change her name. The third woman, her name was F. Let's call her F. Okay, just to keep them straight, because I just suddenly realized that they had the same first initial, but F, this third girl I was seeing, she was the girl I talked to. I talked to her about books, about current events. She was the girl I would talk about things that were going on in the news, because S, my official girlfriend, she just wasn't interested in that, or she was interested in like gossip insofar as her business was concerned, but she had a fairly curtailed set of interests. She was a great girlfriend, but she wasn't intellectually stimulating, to tell you the truth, and that's why I had F. F stimulated me intellectually. I could talk to her about anything. About my favorite band, Rush, of course. I could talk to her about movies, and we'd have like long discussions about movies, about books, about culture. We'd go together to the museum. I love going to museums, right? And S, the official girlfriend, hated going to museums. And quite frankly, L was just not, I do not think that she was culturally equipped to go to a museum, to be quite honest. But F, I'd go to museums with her and I'd have a great time with her. Never slept with her, even though she wanted to have something with me.
Now, if we look at a few details, Gonzalo claims that he was dating one woman while simultaneously having an affair with another woman and also having a platonic relationship with a third woman, who years later will confess to him that she had a crush on him. All of this happened in 1998 while he was living in New York. Well, As I previously mentioned, Gonzalo told numerous publications that he had problems finding romantic relationships. And to prove my point, in a particular interview, one of many, he told the reporter in 1998 that he was currently living in Los Angeles at the time, and that he was spending most of his time locked up writing his second novel, as he was contractually obligated to have it published by 1999. Now, just so that we are all on the same page, this one of many publications written in 1998 confirmed that he was, at the time, living in Los Angeles and not socializing that much. Now, Gonzalo did eventually move and lived in New York. And if we give the benefit of the doubt and just say that he was confusing the dates, well, there are a few other publications published after 2002 when Gonzalo moved back from New York to Santiago de Chile, where he tells of how much he prefers living in Chile because in America, life for him was all about consumerism because he lacked the human connection. And by the way, in this same publication, he does admit that he is unlucky in love, but that he is looking to fix that by finding a woman, getting married, and having a whole dozen of kids. Enough to make a soccer team. Now, this interview was published in 2002, and after over a decade, we can see that he never achieved his goal. And the one marriage that he managed to land didn't last long, because Gonzalo suffers from some serious social problems. And I think we know where those problems come from. And it all started when he was a little kid. See, Gonzalo was constantly traveling due to his father's job. He developed problems that prevented him from being able to connect with other people in a deep social way. He didn't have many friends and remained a loner despite having been able to have sexual experiences later in life. Because of this, many of the advices that Gonzalo gave through his channel did not come from personal experience. To prove my point, he made a video claiming that cheating on his wife was the way to keep a marriage alive, even though in real life his wife separated from him because she got a call from Gonzalo's other woman, who was under the impression that Gonzalo was divorced and was checking to see if that was true. So yes, Gonzalo was projecting a false image of wisdom and giving ill advices to teenagers and lonely 20-year-olds.
What is clear is that Gonzalo Lira and millions of other men are unknowing followers of Max Stirner. They look out for themselves and seek to get as much as they can from life in an amoral and rational manner. So in that sense, I believe that Lira is not really a person that has some deep-placed principles that go beyond his own personal interests. The other thing that we must explain is his whole Ukrainian adventure. Why would anyone in his right mind decide to stay in a war zone and furthermore criticize the government during an active fucking war?
Stopping at minute 9:15, I have an answer to the court's question, but I'll save it after his analysis.
This is difficult to explain. So let's begin with the question of why he took an anti-Ukrainian stance in this conflict, especially given that his wife is Ukrainian and he has lived there for many years. Of course, I cannot read his mind, but I believe that there are two main factors in this equation. The simplest one is self-preservation. He and his family lived in Ukraine, and they did not expect there to be a war. Since everybody in the beginning expected the Russians to also win, he thought that the best thing that could happen was a quick war to avoid a drawn-out war, and for this, he was kicked out of his hotel, and clearly has held a grudge ever since. The second reason is simply contrarianism. Many on the right are guilty of this, and he is no exception. When right-wingers see that the progressive left like something, they immediately do the opposite and dislike it. So when all the Twitter journalists started putting Ukraine emojis on their bios, you can guess what happened. Gonzalo had been opposed to the progressive cultural consensus on pretty much everything, like feminism, vaccines, Trump, etc. So it was to be expected that he would come to be anti-Ukrainian. So as time passed, he got more and more critical of NATO, and not even threats and an arrest could stop him.
Stopping at 10:50, I agree with the court's statement about contrarianism. As a matter of fact, Gonzalo admitted to be a contrarian to a Spanish publication called Cosas as early as 2002. But regarding the first statement about survival, there is a fact we have to mention. Gonzalo's ex-wife filed for divorce in November of 2021, months before the war. Gonzalo, by all means, was completely alone, and according to the court's papers, she had no intentions of resuming a relationship with Gonzalo, especially since they haven't lived as a family since 2017.
The question of why he stayed in Ukraine is also something that is not clear. I would think that it was because he had an American passport and thought that he was basically untouchable. Other than that, I see no reason why anybody should try to stay there, especially when criticizing the government. At last comes the central question of this essay. How can we reconcile the experience and wisdom of his early videos with his delusional conduct in Ukraine? This is a true riddle that we can never really know the answer to. What is clear is that we have a clearly smart and capable character that has no solid ethical foundations and ended up developing a bad case of losing touch with reality.
Stopping at minute 11:33, there is something that we need to make clear. Gonzalo was intelligent, but with that said, the court's sense is giving Gonzalo way more credit than he deserves. But I don't hold it against the courts. Gonzalo Lira appeared to be smarter than he is because of his articulated way of speaking. Gonzalo Lira was raised in an aristocratic family full of lawyers and economists. He was raised by well-educated individuals, but Gonzalo was not smart enough to pass engineering school, which he failed twice. He is on the record that he hardly studied during the 3 academic years he spent at Dartmouth, where, according to him, the teachers didn't care if the students got a good education or not. He got a diploma from a school that serves easy diplomas to kids of legacy families. Everything else, I agree with the court's sense.
However, is this not reminiscent of the life stories of many people who reach fame and then lose it all? Is the character of Gonzalo Lira not the perfect case study on how one can lose touch with reality with the help of the internet? What I believe is obvious is that at the beginning of his channel, his style was calm and grounded, while nearing the end, it became unhinged and frankly pathetic. How can the internet and internet fame cause such a drastic change? And more importantly, why do some people seem unaffected by it, while others just go crazy? I think that the reason is very simple, and I think that it can be best explained when we see the way that he changed even before the war started. In the beginning of his channel, he was mostly focused on life advice. However, as I already mentioned, his most famous videos were not about life advice. Instead, they were about women and sex. Indeed, the more controversial, the better. This shows us that he was willing to change his style and topics in order to chase the attention of his subscribers. And every YouTuber is guilty of this. I mean, I'm making this video because I hope that it will be successful. However, the great problem comes when a content creator comes to intellectually prostitute himself in the search for popularity. I think this is the fundamental difference between Hollywood fame and internet fame. Hollywood fame makes people go crazy because they do not know how to control their newfound wealth and attention. On the other hand, internet fame makes people unhinged because they change themselves in order to be more popular, and this change can be so subtle that the person might not even notice it. In the case of Gonzalo Lira, he changed from life advice to dating coach, and after that he saw an opportunity to comment on the war in Ukraine, and he went for it, and he was quite successful for about a year. And there, I think, lies the reason why he lost it. I've always had the impression that he was an amoral and rational man, and this has its benefits, especially in the business world. Indeed, many smart people that want to make it big never really develop an ethical system, because this would be a burden to them. In the case of Gonzalo, this amorality opened him up for the opportunity of becoming a popular dating coach and later an infamous war reporter. But the price for the flexibility of an amoral life is that without an ethical system to guide you, it becomes very easy to lose yourself. Whenever I see the case of Gonzalo Lira, I see a man who is lost. I see a man who changed for popularity. And I see a man who had a successful YouTube career, and despite this, he lost it all. There, I think, is a true wisdom that we can learn from such a strange character. Amorality has a price, and that price will always be losing oneself. Maybe it is in the front lines of Ukraine, or maybe it is somewhere else. We all are at risk of losing ourselves and losing touch with reality, because when this happens, most people don't even notice it. In the end, it does not matter how smart you are. Once a person becomes detached, not even their intelligence can save them from their delusions.
And finally, stopping at minute 15:05. I do have to disagree with the court's opinion on why Gonzalo became deranged. I do agree with his opinion that internet fame affects people differently. However, in the case of Gonzalo Lira, it is not that plain and simple. Gonzalo Lira created an internet persona that was not congruent with Gonzalo's real life. He had to maintain a facade in front of the camera, and that took a toll on him. Being alone in a war-torn country is emotionally taxing, something that money couldn't fix. I believe that in this aspect, the internet became a form of a lifeline for him. Getting the validation of his followers must have been the only emotional support he had. Plus, we have to remember that he was raised in a family that prides itself on being the direct descendants of the first president of Chile. Gonzalo Lira was not your average YouTuber because he had lived in privilege for most of his life, giving him a fake sense of confidence and superiority to others. He was already living detached from reality way before he even touched a computer for the first time in his life. In fact, his sense of superiority is the cause of why he had problems making friends every time he arrived to a new school as a little kid. When he graduated from college, he refused to take literary classes to improve his writing skills. He claims that literature classes were taught by failed writers who couldn't make it in the real world. But when his books were published, he couldn't take criticism, which is one of the reasons why he only wrote 2 books in English and 1 in Spanish. He was living with the belief that he was smart enough and that he didn't need to learn from others. He was truly living in his own reality, a reality that sadly was collapsing all around him. And just to help people understand how Gonzalo was already living detached from reality way before he was exposed to internet fame, let me share with you the type of PR stunts Gonzalo made to create a fake image of fame and success that he wanted to project to the world back in 2003. The name of the publication is El Mercurio, and the article's headline and subheadline read like this: The Planet Lira. He has worked as a screenwriter in Los Angeles. He traveled alone in Alaska. He has chased the American dream in New York. And he has looked for friends using the intercoms at the train stations in London. He sold the rights of his books in United States for gigantic profits. And now he is back in Santiago with the idea of making an ultra-blockbuster movie. This is the life of Gonzalo Lira, or may as well, this is the story of the endless trip to success. This was the headline of a news publication that Gonzalo used to impress investors, to sucker them into investing their money in Gonzalo's movie. In this article, Gonzalo claims that because of his fame, he had to travel to Alaska to detach himself from the burdens of fame. He claims that he was so popular, he could travel anywhere in the world and bump into people that knows him. He claims there's a formula to know if you are world class. He claims that at any airport, for example, he can check if there's people at that place who know about him. He explains that at the airport, he will go to the help desk and request the lady at the desk to help him find a lost friend. He then will tell the lady that his friend's name is Gonzalo Lira, and in that way, the entire airport will know that he was there. He claims that he can check how popular he was by the amount of people that will come over to say hello to him. He claims that he has done this multiple times in different places around the world. He claims he has found people that way at the London airport and train station. also Munich, Germany, and Atlanta, USA. But he also explains that it didn't work in New York and that he does it to kill time and have fun. So with that said, we ask ourselves, what type of person makes this type of claims? Who uses a public service intercom at an international hub like an airport to check how popular you are? Well, Gonzalo Lira, the original cloud chaser, always looking for the spotlight regardless if it brings fame or infamy, because why worry? And with this, I end my reaction to the Course Sense video. It's a good video and worth watching. Go check it out if you like. In the meantime, that's it for me. If you like the video, click a like and a subscribe to help the channel grow. Thanks again for watching all the way until the end. This is a Facts Hunter. Take care, be safe, and bye for now.